iedereen van harte welgekomen. Start2Taste online. Dat is ondertussen, ik weet niet aan onze hoeveelste sessie toe, maar we hebben er toch al een paar de revue gepasseerd. En vanavond hebben we de eer en het genoegen om jullie mee te nemen naar Australië. Maar eerst en vooral voor de mensen die de eerste keer deelnemen. Mijn naam is Dimitri Bonte. Mijn bedrijf heet Start2Taste. Ik zit in Waregem, Rote Rijstraat. En daar zitten Hans en ik. Hans zal je straks ook nog wel horen en zien. Volle bak. Alles te doen uiteraard qua wijnhandel. Want wij zijn een wijnhandel, kort door de bocht. Wij moeten het dus hebben van flessen wijn te verkopen. Want daar gaat het eigenlijk om. Wij zijn bezig met smaken. Korte introductie misschien. Start2Taste focust zich op smaken en laat zich niet begrenzen door landsgrenzen. Dat betekent dat wij dingen proeven en volgen. En door smaken komen wij in dikwijls ongekende gebieden. En dikwijls ook spannende gebieden. En een daarvan is bijvoorbeeld Australië. Daar gaan we straks meer over vertellen. Als het ware kun je het zien. We nemen je mee in onze auto. En we rijden af van de autostrade waar iedereen op rijdt. Maar we nemen de kleine baantjes. En langs die kleine baantjes gaan we dingen ontdekken. Geuren, smaken, mensen. Hele leuke plaatsen. En dan ga je zeggen, van, wauw, prachtig, ben je nog nooit geweest, zalig. En dat is hetgeen wat wij doen. Onze passie is ontdekken en onze tweede passie is om het te delen. En in de delen zoals vandaag uiteraard via Zoom of via online tastings. Goed, ik zie er nog een paar mensen binnenkomen ondertussen. Wat zou ik alvast voorstellen is dat jullie de 6 lege glazen, of misschien al 6 volle glazen, jullie kunnen de kleine flesjes alvast uitschenken. Misschien een half flesje uitgieten of zo, dan komen de wijnen wat open, krijgen ze wat zuurstof. Dus daar hebben ze zeker deugd van. Mochten er vragen zijn in de loop van dit event, dan kun je die misschien het best via de chat stellen. Hans zal die vragen verzamelen en die dan ook stellen of beantwoorden aan de mensen van Redheads. Dus even de mensen die nog toekomen, zet jullie zelf op mute. Of dat zullen wij voor jullie doen, mocht het niet lukken. Voilà, bij deze. Maar goed, bedien alvast de flesjes en jullie kunnen dan straks proeven samen met ons.
Ja, dus niet bang zijn van dingen op de chat te zetten. Je kunt dat algemeen doen, to everyone. Dus iedere vraag die je wilt zien behandeld, zet ze maar erop. Ik ga dan wel even wachten en wat zaken groeperen. En dan smijt ik dat even naar de mensen van Redheads, zodat zij de nodige vragen kunnen beantwoorden.
Oké. Goed. Let's start to taste. Zoals goede gewoonte begin ik altijd met een mindmap die eigenlijk heel kort toch een beetje de situatie schetst, waar we dan eigenlijk vrij snel overgaan naar de mensen van het domein zelf. Maar bon, ik ga even de mindmap delen en dan kunnen we daar dan verder mee. Voilà. Eerst en vooral, Australië is een Commonwealth. Dat is eigenlijk de officiële benaming van het land. Alright. Als je Australië googelt, want daar begin ik eigenlijk altijd mee. Google weet alles. Het is altijd wel een keer boeiend om te zien wat Google weet over Australië. Ik heb het in het Engels. I did it in English, guys, so you can follow what I'm saying. I'm going to do it in Dutch, but you can follow a little bit what I'm doing here.
I speak fluent Dutch, Dimitri. We're okay.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. So, Australia. Wanneer we dat googlen, eigenlijk is het een naam die blijkbaar komt uit het Latijn, die eigenlijk Southern Land, het Zuiderland betekent, waarvan eigenlijk de bevolking 92% zou afstammelingen zijn van Europeanen, 7% uit Azië en 1% nog de Aboriginal. Het symbool van Australië is dit. Dat is de kangoeroe, zoals je ziet, en de emu, dacht ik. Andy, yeah, that's the emu. What was it again, the name of the second one?
Yeah, the emu or the ostrich.
Ja. En ze hebben dat hier samen opeens... They put it together on one symbol because they almost the same size, which for the balance in the symbol is very important. That's very important. Also, they are originally from Australia. And both cannot go backwards. Dus deze beide dieren hebben verschillende dingen gemeen. En ze kunnen blijkbaar ook niet achteruit lopen. Maar bon, dit is dus het symbool van Australië. Enfin.
They were going to use sharks and snakes, but they decided against that in the end.
Yeah. But much more marketing-minded is this more smarter, I guess. Qua kort, zo'n klein beetje data. Het is het zesde grootste land ter wereld. Het heeft zo'n 7,7 afgerond miljoen vierkante kilometer. Dus ook het grootste land zonder eigenlijk landsgrenzen. Want het is een eiland uiteraard. 26 miljoen mensen. En de hoofdstad is Canberra. Niet Sydney, zoals dat veel mensen zouden denken. Die wel de grootste stad is. Het is het oudste, het platste en het droogste continent. Maar ook het heel arme bodems.
Hey, Dimitri, sorry dat ik even onderbreek, maar er zit hier vrij echt te babbelen achter mij. Maar komt er nadien een quiz die dan op punten staat? Of,
Zou je dat wel? Zou je dat wel naar
nee, maar anders ga ik hier even mijn stem verheffen. Maar
moet geen stress zijn. Ik kan niks winnen of niks verliezen.
Oké, merci. Hè.
Qua geschiedenis hebben ze eigenlijk vooral de Nederlanders die eigenlijk daar als eerste voet aan wal gezet hebben, die dan ook op dit moment de New Holland genaamd hebben, die dan eigenlijk ongeveer zo wel gebruikt is tot het begin van de 19e eeuw. De Aboriginal cultuur is een van de oudste culturen op de wereld. Hier zie je zo een overplaatsing van mocht je Europa in Australië zetten, dan snap je pas echt hoe groot dat Australië is. Ongeveer ook 250 keer, dacht ik, past België in Australië. Dus dat is immens natuurlijk. Ook qua klimaat en bodem, als we naar het hier kijken, vooral 1/3 is woestijn, 1/3 is steppen, die dus ook heel droog kan zijn of heel droog is. En amper 6% van het land zit boven de 600 meter hoogte. En het hoogste punt is een berg. Nu, de pronunciation for this mountain is Kosciuszko, I guess. How do you pronounce it, Andy? Can you help me?
Kosciuszko.
Okay, very good. Which is more than 2,000 meters height.
If you need Australian pronunciation, you need to speak to Alex as the native Australian.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Als we dan naar de geschiedenis gaan, specifiek over wijn dan, is het eigenlijk zo'n beetje begonnen met een James Busby, die eigenlijk vanuit Europa 300 verschillende rassen meebracht. En dat was eigenlijk de starting point, waar dat heel veel, uiteraard verschillende soorten aangeplant werden, maar ook echt waar dat dan Australië op de wijnkaart zette. En zo hebben we verschillende fases zo'n beetje in de geschiedenis omtrent wijn. Tussen 1900 en 1940 was het vooral fortified wine. Dat was op dat moment een zeer grote vraag van versterkte wijnen. Dan later, tussen 1940 en 60, is dan eigenlijk een omswitch geweest naar tafelwijnen. En tussen 60 en vandaag zie je hoe snel ze opklimmen. In 1980 waren ze de 18 grootste wijnproducent, in 1990 de zesde. And I think today you are the fifth one. The fifth largest wine producer, I guess, today. So, they are really booming. Qua grapes, ze hebben heel veel verschillende druivensoorten. Ik heb eigenlijk de belangrijkste hierop gezet. Het is hoofdzakelijk, zoals je ziet, 55% van de druivensoorten zijn rood. Ik heb hier de belangrijkste opgezet, waar Shiraz uiteraard dan misschien het meest bovenuit steekt. Voor wit zou ik neigen om te zeggen Semillon. Spreekt mij enorm aan altijd in Australië. Maar ook fantastische Rieslings. En uiteraard ook Chardonnay. Dat zijn zo'n beetje de belangrijkste of de meest voorkomende druivensoorten in Australië. Qua wetgeving hebben ze eigenlijk een soort geografische, een beetje zoals in Frankrijk eigenlijk afgekeken. GI noemt dat dan. Het verschil is dat zij hier specifiek op geografisch gaan werken en niets anders. Dus het is niet dat ze dan ook verplicht worden om bepaalde druivensoorten, bepaalde methodes, I don't know what, of rendementen. Nee, het is puur geografisch dat hun wetgeving gaat. Het voordeel daarvan is dat je eigenlijk veel vrijer bent om te doen als wijnboer. Je kan veel meer experimenteren. Je kan een keer iets anders doen. Je bent niet gebonden, behalve geografisch dan uiteraard. En dan de regio's. Heel onderverdeeld zo in 5 grote regio's. Zuid-Australië, West-Australië, New South Wales, Victoria en Tasmanië, een eiland, een apart eiland. Die we hier eigenlijk een beetje kunnen zien. Maar dat gaan we zien straks nog duidelijker worden. Voilà. En zo zie je ook hier, de telefoon, ik kan hem even afduwen, maar nee, ik ga hem dat maken. En dan zie je hier New South Wales vooral en Zuid-Australië, die eigenlijk de streken zijn waar de wijnbouw zich plaatsvindt. Zuidoost en ook Zuidwest. Dat is eigenlijk hetgeen die je vooral moet weten van de verschillende regio's. Voilà. We are back. So, but actually, enough talking from my side as introduction. We have 2 guys, Alex and Andy. I asked them how I need to introduce them. So yeah, they even don't know what they are doing in Redheads, but it's something between, it's for sure it's a manager, you know, you need to be a manager. It's manager directing, consulting, I don't know, whatever, but there are a lot of things that they are doing in the company. And I don't know who's going to start. I guess Andy will start, but thank you very much, Andy and Alex, for being here. And we are all yours.
Well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I think that's the nicest introduction I've received in a very long time. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining us this evening. This is a brand new experience for me. This is the first time I've ever hosted a virtual tasting. So I'm really looking forward to giving it a go this evening and kind of seeing how it all works. I know like us, you literally have nowhere else better to be at the moment. But anyway, I still appreciate that you've decided to spend your Thursday evenings with us. Hopefully you'll enjoy the tasting. I'm sure you will. You may or may not have noticed that I've got a distinctly British accent, not an Australian one. And I realise that doing this tasting with a group of Belgians, you may be tempted to mention the word Brexit, but I'm afraid to say that's completely not allowed to be discussed at all this evening. That's completely off the table, I'm afraid. And as Dimitri's probably said, so please keep on mute unless you have a question, but please do feel free to jump in and ask one if you do. The whole point of this tasting is to kind of have fun as well as for it to be informative. So please don't hesitate to ask anything, whether you want to jump in on the video or if you want to put something on chat, then Hans is picking those conversations up as well. But to introduce us, so as I say, my name's Andy, as you can see on my square on the on the screen. I've been with Redheads since 2018, but I've been part of the wider business with Redheads, part of the bigger company for over 10 years. I've been in the wine trade for about 15 years now, and studied for my wine diploma and done all sorts in the wine trade. My job, as Dimitri said, is pretty much in charge of everything. No, I don't know if I can get away with that. My job is mostly to look after sort of growing Redhead sales in Europe, a little bit in the Middle East as well. And probably my favourite Redhead, it is a wine that we'll be tasting this evening. And being the man of taste and sophistication that I am, my favourite Redhead is the most expensive wine in our range, otherwise known as the zombie wine, but officially known as the Return of the Living Red. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll hand over to Alex to tell you a little bit about himself.
Cool. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Alex. I've been working for Redheads since 2016. I've sort of done quite a few things in my time, but my main focus is on like branding, marketing, sales, God, yeah, everything. Events around the world. It's a very fun job to do. Sadly, it's not all drinking wine and meeting lovely people, but you know, that certainly is the most fun part of it. My favorite Redheads wine has to be Vin'Atus. This one here. So it's the first one that we're going to try. And I just think it sums up everything we do at Redheads just really well. It's a funky blend. It's a bit different. And well, it's a fruity, delicious wine that we hope you all enjoy. But yeah, we've got a few slides to run through with you tonight. So you don't have to write everything down. But yeah, back to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Cool. Well, as Alex said, we do have a few slides that we'll run through. If it gets a little bit much having the slides and flicking between us, then we can stop the slides and we can just kind of crack on from there, I suppose.
Yeah, then I will tell you to stop.
Sorry?
Then I will tell you to stop.
Yeah.
Or just Hans will just be doing that.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, there's the two of us. Like we say, Alex been with us since 2016, me since 2018. Of course, as we say, neither of us are the winemaker. Alex has been fortunate enough to work a vintage in Australia, but I've not had the chance to visit yet, being relatively new, and our plans were somewhat squashed by COVID, unfortunately. But we do have a message from our winemaker, so I'll just click play on this. Who wanted to?
We don't see the slides, Andy. We don't see the slides.
Okay. Let's have a look.
Yeah, perfect.
There we go. There we are. So here is the video that we've had Alex Trescothick, our head winemaker, to create for you.
Hi, I'm Alex, winemaker at Redheads. Apologies I can't be there tonight. I'm in the Barossa and it's 6 a.m. I hope you have a good tasting with... Hi, I'm Alex, winemaker at Redheads. Apologies I can't be there tonight.
Oh, sorry.
Tonight, I'm in the Barossa and it's 6 a.m. I hope you have a good tasting with Andy and Alex, and I hope to see you when the borders reopen. Cheers, guys.
Now, I hope he wasn't actually drinking at 6 o'clock in the morning in Australia, but having travelled with Alex, our winemaker, and seen him enjoying a few beers, it wouldn't surprise me if he did make that video at 6 o'clock in the morning with a glass of wine. But there we go. So we thought we'd start off very briefly before we go into our first wine, just with a bit of a snapshot of what's going on in Australia at the moment. So it's currently harvest time. The grapes, I think we've picked some. Alex, were you saying the Chardonnay has some Chardonnays come in, but
Yeah,
mostly Chardonnay for now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some Chardonnays come in, but that's it for everything that we've seen so far. The vintage has been pretty good from what I understand. In terms of kind of normal years, obviously the area is pretty hot anyway, so it's been as you'd expect. It started off a little bit wetter in the spring than it normally would be. So it was a little bit of a slow start, a little bit nervy, but that sort of dried up a little bit now. And long term, sort of over the course of the growing season, it's kind of evened out into the temperatures that you would expect. Throughout the season, yeah, the growing conditions have been sort of near perfect, I suppose. So the photos that you've got here, these are some of the grapes arriving here. This is our winery in the top left. We've obviously got the Redheads barrel there as well. A few of the grapes coming in there on the right. Keegan, one of our junior winemakers, looking pretty happy with himself with some of the red grapes that are coming in. And if we look down here, So yeah, there's a little snapshot of the grapes arriving in there as well. Fortunately, I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago now. You may or may not remember, but about this time last year, we were seeing lots of bushfires in all over Australia. We thought back then that was going to be the worst thing that happened in 2020, but obviously a lot's happened since then. And so fortunately, we've been getting updates from the team in Australia, and I think there's been one kind of smallish fire over the last few weeks in South Australia, which is almost, to be completely honest, it's almost miraculous that we've just had one so far. So that's been pretty lucky.
Maybe if sorry, I interrupt you, but just to point a little bit. My first meeting, because in general I'm not such a big fan of the Australian wines because mostly they are too heavy, and suddenly I get a call from an Australian winemaker who said, "Yeah, maybe we should meet, and I'm for sure I can surprise you with wines I make." And I said, "Okay, I don't have a lot of time, but okay, you know, we meet somewhere on the road and not so far away from a customer." So we asked the customer, "Can we just have 5 minutes of a little bit of your place just to do a small tasting and to meet this guy?" And I've tasted these wines from Australia, and I was quite surprised because they are different. They are different in a kind of way. And the story about Redheads, which we did not explain yet, Andy or Alex, what is the idea of Redheads? And what is really the beginning of this story? What was he thinking of? What were the guys thinking? What was the philosophy? I think that is important to share that before we maybe then start with the first wine.
Yeah, most certainly. Well, let me go into that then for you. So, well, actually, I'll just bring the slide up as well that I had.
Yeah, we've got a few pictures. Helps to show it off.
Yeah. So let me load it up for you here.
Actually, so while Andy's doing that, I can at least start on the story. So we started back in 2002, back in the Mc Laren Vale. So as Dimitri showed on that map, we're in South Australia. So the Mc Laren Vale is a region just to the south of Adelaide. We started out there, and there is our winery. Andy, do you want to?
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, so like you said, well, I mean, like strictly speaking as well, as much as we are Australian, the story actually goes back a little bit further than the 2000s, where, you know, as we've said, we're sort of essentially owned by a British wine merchant in the UK. And we started off almost, Tony Lathwaite, you may or may not be familiar with the name, and he owns a chateau or two in France. And something that he was quite keen on, because he got to know a fair few Australian winemakers, something that he wanted to do was to bring some of the Australian winemakers over to his chateau in France, to kind of teach the French winemakers a few tricks. So some slightly new world, some Australian way of thinking, and start producing some French wine. Then what we were finding was these Australian winemakers were going back to Australia when they'd finished working at the vintage, when they'd finished working in France. They were going back to Australia, and they were going back to their day jobs. And their day jobs were in some of the big wineries in Australia, some of the huge names, the Penfolds, the Hardys, the Lindemans, those sorts of things. And these guys were finding their experiences slightly limited. And what they wanted to do was sort of make individual wines with real character and to be really interesting and a little bit different. And so kind of almost as luck would have it, in 2002, we were kind of looking for somewhere to set up for these guys to work. And we came across an old Indian restaurant for sale in the Mc Laren Vale. That restaurant was called Redheads. And when we bought the restaurant, we bought the show, we bought the winemaking place, and we thought, well, we quite like the name, so let's keep it. And so that's why since 2002, we've been known as Redheads, just because the first winery, it was an Indian restaurant, it was called Redheads, so we thought, why not, let's stick with that. So it essentially started off as a place for Australian winemakers who, like I say, they were doing their usual jobs. They were making wine, and they were making the kind of the famous Australian wines, the Shiraz, the Cabernets, the Chardonnays, and those sorts of things. But they wanted to do things a little bit different. So we gave them this shed. They had no vineyards at the time. We didn't have any vines. So their job was to go out and to find interesting small parcels of grapes, to bring them in and to produce wine in the tiny shed in the Mc Laren Vale in Australia. It was called Redheads. It was a tiny little place, and that's essentially how it started. It was going on this way. It was moving along very nicely until about 2008. We were starting to get a little bit bigger. We were producing more wine. We were having more winemakers come in, and we basically outgrew the shed that we were in originally. So we moved to another bigger winery again in the Mc Laren Vale. This happened again in 2014. We outgrew the shed again, outgrew the winery. We're producing too much. We were getting too popular. We were selling too many wines in Belgium, so we had to move and find somewhere even bigger to move to. That's when we ventured across to the famous Barossa Valley, and we had our first winery there. Before, in 2018, we moved into a new one. So considering the first winery was in 2002, it's now 2021, and we've already had 4 wineries. I think now we're quite settled, especially considering how much our boss spent building the new winery. I don't think he's going to be happy for us to move anytime again soon. So let me show you a photo.
Andy, can I just do a little translation? I think most of us understand English, but anyway, to have a quick translation.
Please.
Dus hetgeen dat Andy vertelde is eigenlijk het verhaal dat we ook altijd bij Start2Taste vertellen. En dat hij dus eigenlijk dat volledig correct is, wat je anders verwacht. Dus in 2002 een aantal Australische wijnmakers die gaan naar het kasteel in Frankrijk van een Engelse wijnmaker die in Australië wijnen maakt en die ook een kasteel bezit in Frankrijk. Ze gaan daar naartoe om zo wat nieuwe tricks aan te leren. Komen terug, gaan werken in de grote wijndomeinen, laten we zeggen in Australië, zoals dat we de Penfolds kennen en Harleys. Maar ze hebben dus zin om zelf laten we zeggen, te experimenteren, om zelf wijnen te maken. Ze beginnen verder te denken en ze komen dus op een plaats die te koop staat. En dat is een Indisch restaurant, een klein restaurantje. Met de naam Redheads, dat ze besluiten om te kopen. Ze kopen wat materiaal aan. Ze hebben geen eigen wijngaarden. Ze gaan dus wat druiven gaan opkopen van percelen hier en daar dat ze spotten die voor hen interessant zijn. En ja, eigenlijk is dat zo'n beetje een kweekvijver van wijnmakers, jonge wijnmakers, die in dat kleine restaurantje of vroeger restaurantje beginnen experimenteren en wijnen beginnen maken. En zo is het verhaal eigenlijk gestart in 2002. Er komen continu nieuwe wijnmakers bij. Dat is echt een kweekvijver geworden. Dat kent meer en meer succes. Dat begint groter en groter te worden. En dus ja, arriveren we dan uiteindelijk nu, waarbij dat ze al 4 wineries hebben. Ze hebben ook een nieuw gebouw gezet. Dus ze zijn echt wel booming. En ze hebben dus ja, natuurlijk een zeer groot aantal wijnen, waarvan we het geluk hebben van er vanavond een 6-tal te kunnen proeven. Oké, thanks Andy.
Okay, let's move on to the first wine of this evening, which is Vin'Atus.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for translating. I'm pleased to hear that you were listening.
Well, he might not have been listening. I have no idea what he said.
Well, so let's come on to the fun part of the tasting. So this evening's lineup, I think we've got an incredible selection here. We've got, apologies if there's anybody that doesn't like red wine, by the way. It's literally just dawned on me that everything we've got here is red. But that is pretty much everything that we make where we are. So this is tonight's lineup. And as you can see here, I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with the labels, but they tend to be quite striking. in normal times, my favorite part of my job is being out and about tasting, is going along to things and talking about wine kind of face to face. And it's always the first thing whenever I'm kind of behind a table and everybody's sort of coming up and trying wines, the first thing that everybody says to me is whether they like the label or the ticket maybe. And so we pride ourselves, as you can see, there's no real, possibly with a couple of monkeys, there's no real theme to our labels. We like to think that all of our wines are individual and have their own character. And so for that reason, we like to come up with a different story and a different label for each wine that we come up with. No two wines are the same, so why should the labels be? Alex, I know that you have a little bit to do with the labels. Perhaps you can explain some of your thought process that goes into some of the labels that you've been responsible for over the years.
Sure. So with each of our labels and each of our wines, we want them to, you know, be their own character, their own personality, and to really stand out from the rest of the family. So the first wine that we're going to try is Vin'Atus. So if you all, you know, crack it open, have a taste, and then you know, I can talk a bit more about that as well. But yeah, this is the thing, you know, with our Redheads family of brands, we want each one to be completely special and unique. So it's a big ethos of us as a winery that we make each wine from its special parcel of grapes, special vineyards, close family relations with our growers. And that's the thing, that's what's really, really important to us as a brand. You know, we're not making just generic big blends. These are all very special wines in the family. So the first one here tonight, the Vin'Atus, it's a Tempranillo Graciano Garnacha, which you may all recognize a bit more traditionally as a Spanish blend. The two people that we have there in the photo, Joe and Tony, are actually an Italian family, but they moved out to Australia and you know, thought, what are we going to do with this you know, this 60-acre cattle property? Tell you what, let's plant some grapes. So instead of doing, you know, the boring stuff of, you know, Shiraz, Cabernet that you can find everywhere, what they've done is planted some much more interesting varietals. They've gone Spanish with the Tempranillo, the Graciano Garnacha. We're going to come on to their Italian varietals with the next wine, and they do some Portuguese varietals as well, so they have a bit of Touriga on their vineyard. But going back to Vin'Atus, so the story is all about, we wanted to have fun. We wanted this to be our wine games. We wanted it to be a bit different. So just on the back label, we have this little tale. Will the jester dance a jig, twiddle his violin, or take a swipe with his bow? Our fun-loving figures are always ready for action. So actually, Andy, if you could just bring up that the image of the label again. So this idea of Vin'Atus, vinum Vin'Atus, sort of a bit of a fun Latin phrase for wine games. We actually originally wanted the label to be all different stickers that you could peel those off the label and then make your own little puppets at home. But sadly, that wasn't possible because when you print it on a curved bottle, all the stickers would fall off. But never mind. But yeah, that is our Vin'Atus. It's from an area. It's not actually from one of the GIs. So you have Barossa over here. You have the Adelaide Hills here, and then One Tree Hill is just from its own little section. So the wine is actually classed as Adelaide, even though it is from one very, very special, tiny little place. There's just only 3 or 4 growers there. So it's just not its own GI.
These Spanish grapes, can you find them often in Australia, or is it very rare you can find them and only with this producer?
No, so they are grown in other parts, but it's certainly, you know, the non-traditional varietals for Australia are very, very rare. I can't give you an exact percentage, but you know, things like Tempranillo, Graciano, you know, they're in a minority, very, very much a minority. Okay. But I mean, the reason why they work so well, you know, and again, we'll talk about it a bit with Ridotto, is the climate and the conditions of certainly the areas say around the Adelaide Hills. You've got the altitude there. So the Rockhat Vineyard is between 260 and 300 meters above sea level. So you have the altitude just playing that part to bring the temperature down a little. But you also have this, nice cool evenings to balance out the hot days. So again, very similar to, places like Rioja. The climate is quite similar in in this part of Australia, which is why there is also an increasing amount of these varietals coming out.
So we can say this is an Australian Rioja.
Not legally, but yes. So Andy and I can't say that, but you can.
You can say whatever you like, Dimitri. I'm not going to complain.
Dus gewoon even vertellen. Dus de eerste wijn dat we drinken, dus een beetje de Spaanse blend, laten we zeggen. Dus het klimaat is vergelijkbaar met een beetje vergelijkbaar met hetgeen dat je hebt in de Rioja bijvoorbeeld. Dus je hebt de zee nabij. De wijngaarden liggen op 200 tot 300 meter hoogte. En het grote voordeel van Australië is en blijft, je hebt zeer warme dagen, maar je hebt serieus wat afkoeling 's nachts. Dus je hebt afkoeling van de hoogte waar de wijngaarden liggen, afkoeling van de zeebries laten we zeggen, en ook afkoeling 's nachts. Wat maakt dat je geen vermoeiende wijnen hebt. Je hebt geen wijnen met te veel alcohol, maar je hebt voldoende frisheid in de wijnen. En dat is precies hetgeen dat we bij Start2Taste graag horen. I was just listening to the explanation. I said, you started with the fact that you started with searching for little plots of where you can buy the grapes at the start in 2002, I think. At the end now, you're saying that you have 4 wineries you work with, let's say, where you buy the grapes. Do you also have your own vineyards or not? Not at all.
So I think there's just a slight confusion there. So we have had 4 different addresses, but there's only one.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
but you have your own vineyards also?
Yeah, so it's actually, we've been around since 2002, but it was only, in 2017 when we moved to Angaston Road, our current home, that we have owned our own vineyard. Oh, here we go. Let's see how this goes. So over that time, we worked with small family growers all around South Australia. And actually, some of those relationships are still going today. But the point is, across this huge area that is South Australia, by not limiting ourselves just to this tiny little vineyard. So our winery, our property, there you go. So that area there that Dimitri zoomed in on, that is our winery. That is our vineyard, and that is all Shiraz with a very tiny amount of Touriga planted as well. But by not limiting ourselves just to this bit of land, it means that we can grow. Well, we can work with all these different varietals, like the Spanish blend here, the Italian blend. Tonight we're going to taste, maybe 12, 15 different varietals in our collection. But this is the thing. I mean, that map actually that Dimitri showed earlier just shows the scale of Australia. It had so much of Europe all of Europe can fit into this country with plenty of space left for.
This is Belgium, by the way. This is Tasmania. Yeah. And if you zoom out, then you can really compare Belgium. Fits 250 times in. I didn't try it, but I calculated it. So this is what it is. Yeah.
But this is the thing. It's actually, this website is brilliant because it does show you just how big Australia is compared to these other countries that you just don't see it normally, but it's huge. And this is the thing. We're able to work with these growers in South Australia, that from in the Clare Valley in the north down to Coonawarra in the south. And it's this huge expanse of land with
I like this wine very much. It has nice acidity, you know, that's very important. It's very drinkable. It reminds me of Rioja, like we already discussed. I don't know what people think of this, but this is very, very, very drinkable. And blind, my opinion, you will never guess it from Australia. But it is.
Someone is asking what is the exact relation between the ones that planted the grapes, who have the grapes, and the Redheads family. But I think you buy the grapes from them and you work in close relationship with them, controlling also everything they do, or?
Yeah, so this is the thing, that our winemaker, Alex, he is, you know, throughout the year, he is going to each of our growers, working with them, talking with them, you know, ensuring the quality is there. And yeah, you know, even down to harvest date, you know, we'll say, you know, yeah, just keep grapes on the vines, you know, for another couple of days, another couple of weeks, and then, you know, we pick them when they're ready. So yeah, it's you know, it's a very close relationship that we have with all of these growers. And so
that is something which happens more and more often with young, let's say young trendy or young winemakers, because they don't have the money to buy a lot of land, and they work together very close with people who have the vineyards. So it's something new which is popping up more and more, I feel, with young winemakers.
But again, it just makes sense. It allows you to pick the best fruit and to make, you know, such a wide range of styles. Which, I mean, just from tonight, we're going to Spain, Italy, Portugal, France, and just good old Australia.
Just another question. Someone wants to know, what are you doing to look at the quality of the grapes when visiting your growers, let's say? Could you do it by tasting the grapes? Someone is asking. I think it's a big analysis. It's not only tasting the grapes, but a big analysis, I think.
Yeah, just the winemaker just walks down each row and just
till they've finished. Okay.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
It's a bit like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Does that translate? Charlie in the Chocolate Factory? Yeah.
No.
It'll be
Jackie and the Chocoladefabriek.
The thing is, Alex Trzaskowicz, our winemaker, has been making wine for probably 20 odd years. When he grew up on a family that had vines, they were making wine when he was a child. He's always been around wine. He studied wine, he's made wine in France, Germany, California. He can tell a lot just by walking up and down the vines, and a lot by sight, looking at the size, looking at the ripeness, looking at the size of the bunches, looking at the canopies. He knows South Australia as well as anybody. So it's like sort of such a normal thing for him now to walk along and to understand the quality of the grapes. But yeah, back to the Vin'Atus then. So this is, as Alex said, it's predominantly Tempranillo, which you're probably getting quite a lot of the sort of the cherry and plum flavors, like Dimitri, you were saying, with a Rioja. That taste profile is synonymous with that style of wine. It has spent 10 months in oak, and I think it's a mixture of both French and American. So it's got a little bit of sweetness, some of the sort of cinnamony kind of flavors, a little bit of vanilla, but not like, I can sometimes find Rioja to be really vanilla tasting from the lots of American oak. Whereas I think this is nice and it's a little bit sweeter, but it's not over the top and not too sweet, I don't think. In terms of what you would eat, in terms of food pairing, I'd probably be inclined to again go along the Spanish route and maybe kind of roast lamb. And the Aussies, of course, we'd say there's not a tasting note for any Australian wine that hasn't included the word barbecue in it. And so I think this is you know, Australian wine, Australian culture is synonymous with the Barbie. And so anything that's been on the barbecue would be a perfect food match for this as well. And as you can taste, this is a 2017 vintage. Something that we like to do at Redheads. It's quite often with Australian wine, people release it as soon as it's made. With Redheads, we like to feel that we drink it when it's at its best to drink. Like the Spanish, like the French, like the Italians, they won't make the wine and give it out to customers straight away. They will age the wine a little bit themselves, and then they'll release it to customers. So this is a 2017. For me, this is still very, very fresh. It tastes very young. It tastes very fruity. It's probably at its best to drink now. I think maybe 3 or 4 years is quite a nice time period to drink a wine of this style, but you'd probably be drinking it for another 2 or 3 years as well.
And by the way, every bottle is with a screw cap closed. Yeah.
Dus qua food pairing, gewoon om even te vertalen, ik denk dat iedereen het begrepen heeft. In Australië staat dikwijls synoniem met barbecue. Dus dit is een perfecte wijn om bij barbecue te doen. Maar iets van lamsvlees, het is de moment mensen, voor het lamsvlees. Dat is een ideale combi met deze wijn. En zoals dat we het al gezegd hebben, ja, je merkt natuurlijk de elegantie in het glas. Hè. Ze hebben het voordeel dat ze daar voldoende elegantie, voldoende aciditeit kunnen insteken. Ze laten hem ook een beetje opvoeden, of ze voeden hem een beetje op eik, maar heel gebalanceerd. Combinatie van Franse eik en Amerikaanse eik. Amerikaanse eik heeft zo'n beetje meer een zoetere toets dan de Franse eik. Maar heel mooi in balans en niet zoals dat je dikwijls hebt in Spanje of in Rioja, zeker niet te veel eik. Het is niet dat je hem kunt knabbelen, dat ons. Oké, thank you.
Very curious now to have the real redhead. I've Googled, of course, Australia for my presentation, but somehow if I Google redhead, then different kind of stuff pops up. But this was an example. Yeah. All right, Ridotto Royale.
Ridotto. That's a good pronunciation. You can pronounce it a lot better than I can. Well, Alex, we'll hand over to you first to talk about where the brand concept, where the idea came from for this one.
So as we've already said, so the Ridotto Royale, we've gone from our Spanish blend. We're now into our Italian blend. So it's actually a wine that it's gone through a few changes over the years, but each year it always is 5 different Italian varietals. But you know, each year has actually been a different blend. So it's all part of the fun. It's all down to which grapes are showing the best that year. The one that we've got here is our 2017, excuse me. It's a blend of Sangiovese, Barbera, Montepulciano, Sagrantino, and Nebbiolo. So, I mean, if you think about Italian wine and regions, you know, this is also, it's sort of quite a cross-Italian blend. You know, we're in Tuscany, we're up in the north, we are everywhere. But the story of our wine, our Ridotto Royale. So the Ridotto was actually back in Venice in the 18th century. It was the first ever casino. So it's where you had all the elite from Europe would descend on Venice, gamble their money away, and well, wake up with a lot of regrets the next morning. But we thought that, you know, doing this 5 grape blend, this 5 Italian grape blend in Australia was our biggest gamble to date. So it all just made sense with the story. And then our boss said, do you know what? We don't have any redheads on any of our labels. So put a redhead on it. And well, yeah, that's how we got the Ridotto label and story. And we've it's all from, well, mostly from the same vineyards before as Vin'Atus. So the Italian family with their you know, the nice altitude, the warm days, cool nights. But we also have a little bit of the fruit is from a guy called Adrian Hoffman, who he's an absolute legend in South Australia in the Barossa. But we will talk about Adrian Hoffman for the Princess of Thieves. He is a very big part in that wine.
Yes.
So, yeah, what do we think?
For those of you like me that are a little bit geeky when it comes to what the actual percentage of the blend is. It's 40% Sangiovese, 20% each Barbera and Montepulciano, and then 10% each Sagrantino and Nebbiolo. So 40, 20, 20, 10, 10. And I think, I mean, every vintage I think I've tasted of Ridotto has been a slightly different blend to the last. I think the winemaker partly likes to just try and confuse me and Alex when we're trying to talk about the wine and taste the wine. I think he's just trying to keep us on our toes so we know exactly what we're talking about. Fortunately, obviously, we're both very professional, and so we both know the exact blends of each wine all the time.
It's also part of the reason why we referred to Ridotto and Vin'Atus as the Italian and the Spanish one, just so that we, it's much easier to remember that way.
It makes sense.
Especially after a few bottles during a tasting. It's just keep it easy, keep it simple. It's a wine for me that Ridotto, Andy and I, very lucky that we get to try vintage at all the different stages of their development. In fact, Ridotto is the one that, it's from when these wines first bottled to every vintage, it just changes so much. It's absolutely incredible. Like the just that sort of maturity that's on it, I find this that sort of gaminess almost after just after 4 years. 4 years? Yeah, it's about 5 years now actually. 4 years. 17, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's hard to remember with Australian vintages.
Hard to remember after a couple of
It's so difficult.
So again, for those of you with a particular interest in the winemaking side of things, with this, with the 2017, it was all fermented in big sort of 1 ton open fermenters, which are a real sort of traditional way of making things with Redheads. They've always been a big fan. If you can picture the kind of what was at the beginning, the fermenter, the sort of the wide open barrel, and then the punching down twice a day. Then it spent, I think, about 10 months again in both a mixture again of French and American oak. And it's undergone, as you might be able to sort of pick up on the label, a little bit of malolactic fermentation as well. But it's still, as again, we've got the 2017 vintage, like Alex said, with the Vin'Atus, and it still tastes incredibly fresh as well. Cheers.
Again, the same nice freshness which we have. We both have a little bit, like someone already mentioned, I guess, a slightly eucalyptus kind of touch in it, which gives it, the drinkability, the freshness that we need to make it fluid. And yeah,
actually,
a nice wink to Italy. Yeah. Cool.
I think as well, this maybe it's, I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but I always think of Italian wine as having great acidity. So that's why it's obviously so good with pasta and pizza and everything. And with this wine, you get a lovely freshness still as well. Even for 4 years old, it still feels really, really fresh, really vibrant, and really fruity.
It's a very big generalization for Italian red wines, but it's something I was taught in one of my WSET lectures, and it is all Italian red wines are high in acidity and taste like cherry, which I find it's a good way of summing up Ridotto. And there's obviously a lot more to it, don't get me wrong, but this has that really classic Italian good acidity and a nice whack of cherry in there, and it's just a really, really tasty wine.
But I think that at the same time as well, what are we, 14.5%? I think 14.5% alcohol. You know that it's definitely got, it's not an Australian twist on an Italian classic, maybe.
Yeah, but you don't feel it. You both have 14.5. The first one also have 14.5, but you don't sense that. That's the balance which is still there. Yeah.
Mm.
Someone is also mentioning it's very juicy, with, in fact, like we said, the eucalyptus on top of it, and without the bitterness of some Italian wines. Someone else says very nice and balanced, and the soft tannins. Met die acidity, in fact, that's true. Dus de aciditeit is inderdaad aanwezig in de wijn, zoals dat we bij veel van de wijnen zullen zien. Dus je blijft met een zeer elegant iets in je glas. Zij maakten de vergelijking of de food pairing van deze wijn, bijvoorbeeld, ja, zoals Italiaanse wijnen, te gaan drinken bij pasta's en pizza's en dergelijke meer. Dus ik denk dat dat een zeer goede match is. Sowieso gerechten waar dat het wat veel tomaat in zit, bijvoorbeeld, of met een tomatensaus. Dan heb je sowieso die aciditeit van de tomaten en dat is de perfect match met deze wijn. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. I might just give a quick shout out. I feel like I'm at a dinner party with Julie, Philip, and Stein there maybe. Thank you very much for inviting us to your dinner party this evening. I feel like I've become my dad, and I feel like I'm sat at the head of the table. It feels like the first dinner party I've been to in about 6 months, I think. So thank you for going to the effort. And I'm also incredibly jealous of the lime green hat that I can see down there as well on my screen.
I'm looking forward to you pronouncing this. Yeah.
I was going to say I won't attempt a pronunciation because I'll probably offend everybody. But the green hat is fantastic, and I'm going to ask you at the end of the call where I can buy one for myself, but preferably in red for the next time I do a virtual tasting. So some
but they do have red glasses on, which is quite nice.
The red glasses are perfect for redheads. I like the.
Actually, if anybody can't see this, if you change your setting to gallery view, at least that's how it is for us, then you can just see everybody else who is part of the tasting.
We talked about the redheads as some crazy young guys making wine, so I think that's why some people dress up like that.
Well, that's why I don't know how well we can see this, but that's why both Alex and I have got our monkey t-shirts on.
But that's jumping ahead in the tasting.
That's giving a little sneak preview to what's happening later on.
I mean, she's lost her head, but that's my Ridotto t-shirt up there.
Is it up there, Alex, because you can't fit into it because of lockdown anymore, or?
Okay, maybe it's time to go to the third wine.
The third wine. So next up we have the definitely one of my favorite wines in the range. This is the Princess of Thieves, and again we're kind of continuing our trend of creating an Australian version of a French classic. So this wine here is 65% Grenache, 25% Syrah, and 10% Mourvèdre, or in Australia, as we call it, Mataro. So quite often Mourvèdre, you may see that on French wine bottles. If you see Mataro on an Australian bottle, you know it's the same grape variety. And I'll hand over to Alex, who will talk about the vineyard itself.
Thank you, Andy. So look, as ever, we have a nice story to tell with our wine label. So for Princess of Thieves, this is actually one where the people behind the label, they got a bit poetic with this one. So if you'll bear with me, I have got a little verse to tell you. So it's all on the back label, if any of you do have the bottle there. It's a striking creature with a most lustful heart. The night is her ally in performing her craft. She strives to obtain a ruby red treasure of unsurpassed beauty and value past measure. A calling in life, her great reason to live. She takes what she wants, but chooses to give. So the Princess of Thieves. I can't translate that one. I can't translate that. Sorry. Yeah, if you could translate that and make all the lines rhyme as well, that'd be very good. But it's basically the Princess of Thieves. It's this gorgeous, aromatic, fruity, seductive wine that when you taste it, when you smell it, when you enjoy it, you just can't help but have more and more and more. It's a wine that, I mean, when we do events around the place, it's the one that if it's not on a lineup, we have so many customers that just kind of, where is it? What's happening? What's going on? We need it back. It's as Andy said, it's a really great wine. But the vineyards itself, so the wine, it's a GSM, so classic from the Rhone Valley. And we've actually gone to two of our favourite Redheads growers for this one. A guy called Adrian Hoffman and one called John Koleski. So this photo that we've got here, that is Hoffy. So he is, you know, him and his family are absolute legends of the Barossa. So we had the dates earlier on Dimitri's presentation, you know, talking about modern Australia and when everything came over. But Hoffy can actually trace his family back to 1857. So they've been on this same land, you know, for 6 generations, which, I mean, that is basically, you know, modern Australia, modern South Australia. You know, he's got 120 hectares with some of the vines. His Shiraz and Cabernet are up to 130 years old. So again, you know, think back to Dimitri's dates on those slides. This is, you know, these are some of the oldest vines in Australia. One of the things with Australia, it also, you know, that predates the whole phylloxera problems in, you know, in France. So that's, you know, that's what we're talking about here. But the vineyard itself, really nice, well-drained, sandy clay loam over a solid limestone. So, you know, it makes those vines really stress. We get really concentrated, great fruit flavors, a lot of depth. This is also in the north of the Barossa. So it's where we have the lowest rainfall. So again, lots of concentration in the fruit. With John Koleski, the grower for the Shiraz. Sorry, so Hoffy was the Mataro and the Grenache. John Koleski grows the Shiraz for this wine in an area called Canunga, which again is in the Barossa, but it's a nice elevation, 280 meters above sea level. So as we've talked about before, the hot days with the cool nights, so the grapes really ripen a lot through the day, and that cool night just helps everything just to calm down, again, just developing complexity. But again, you know, soils that with great drainage, so those grapes really have to fight and really develop an incredible flavor. With John, you know, he's an old man now. He's got a bit of help around the vineyard, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying that he's an older guy now. But he does go, you know, the extra mile, and, you know, he handpicks those vines. So, you know, we guarantee that we are only getting the best fruit whenever we deal with John and Hoffy and, well, all of our growers. It is the best fruit that they have, which is hopefully reflected in the wine that we're all enjoying now.
Yeah, so again, for those of you like me who like to know the exact percentages of things, I want to mention it in our 65 Grenache, 25% Syrah, and 10% Mourvèdre. I think this, when I drink this, I think it's a classic kind of wine drinker's wine. I think it definitely reminds me of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and it takes me back to my sort of earlier days in the wine trade, when the first regions I was taught were Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Rioja and these kind of places. So it takes me back to discovering Châteauneuf-du-Pape for the first time. And I think it's got that kind of plummy cherry aromas to it, but it's definitely, you can see it's starting to get a little bit of age. You can see it's starting to develop some brown around the outside as well. And again, from the oak, there's a nice sort of cedary and kind of sweet oaky kind of aromas to it as well.
Actually, just to answer your question there, Timmy, across all of these wines that we're trying tonight, the residual sugar, that actual sweetness level in the wines is very, very low. You know, with these wines, we're talking, you know, if you know what this all means, but, you know, less than 1 gram of sugar, 2 grams of sugar, 3 grams of sugar. So it's very, very low. That sense of sweetness in the wine is because we just have, we get such an incredible level of fruit from our growers that, you know, it's not sweet, but the wine is very fruity. So it sort of tricks your mind to thinking that it's sweet, but actually the level of sugar is incredibly low. So all of these wines are fermented to be dry.
Als iemand die de vraag stelde, zo'n sweetness in het, en zit er wel zoetheid in, dus je hebt inderdaad die impressie van zoetheid, maar gewoon omdat je zeer rijp fruit hebt, Dus zeker niet dat er hoge percentages aan suiker in zitten, maar we spreken echt over fruitsuikers. Dus echt rijp fruit. Someone is saying the alcohol is very good under control, which is a challenge with Grenache, in fact.
Absolutely.
And very juicy. And someone says, is the best so far.
Hey,
that's good.
Very good.
Actually, we need to do some votes at the end for for everybody's favourite.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
I also feel the need to apologise to Bart for not mentioning him earlier when I was saying how good everybody looked in the video. I didn't realise we'd been joined by Zorro. I've only just looked down and seen the incredible outfit there. So thank you very much for taking the time and effort to create that outfit. You look incredible.
It's all about atmosphere, you know.
Is he trying to suggest a new wine label for us?
Maybe.
Dude, the Zorro.
Someone is asking, would this one be drinkable without any food?
All of our wines are drinkable without.
I think so. And if food is present, what would you pair it with? Is the next question.
Well, I mean, apart from saying the obvious, which would be the barbecue, that's my gut instinct. And whenever anybody asks me a question on what we should, admittedly, it's quite difficult to have a barbecue in England in March. It's probably not dissimilar where you are. I haven't tried to have a go yet. I'm not sure really. I think it is quite full-bodied, so you'd need. I'd be inclined, being a half Brit, half Irishman, I'd be inclined to have a big Irish stew with this wine. A nice kind of hearty kind of casserole, a nice sort of meaty and veggie kind of stew is probably something that I would be inclined to go with if I wasn't having a barbecue. What about you, Alex?
Indeed, een soort stoofpotje eigenlijk. Hè. Dat gaat er eigenlijk perfect bij gaan. Ja, inderdaad. Ik kreeg spontaan zin erin natuurlijk. Ja, very good match. Let's call it like that.
I hope so. I'm just sorry that we don't all have that to eat. Next tasting will come and cook as well. So I just want to, I know Alex wanted to kind of briefly talk about the Redheads movement, kind of overall about what we do, about the, we've touched on it a little bit already, but a little bit about the kind of the ethos of Redheads and the movement and kind of what it takes to be kind of a redhead, I suppose. So let me just bring that slide up for you. And I know, Alex, you wanted to have a quick run through this.
Absolutely. It's this side of redheads that we really think marks us out as different and unique and special. And it's one of the things that myself and Andy love about redheads and talking about redheads with customers. Is this whole movement and everything that goes into it. So back in the past, as Andy said, we used to have multiple winemakers, 6 winemakers, 8 winemakers, working in a vintage. Whereas now we're one winemaker, with an assistant, but working with this whole variety of different growers across South Australia. And that's what we're about. We're about going out and finding the best fruit in the Barossa, Mc Laren Vale, Clare Valley, Coonawarra, South Australia. And that's the thing. It's having this, this really close relationship. Part of what's also really great about us is this grape liberation. And it's through this special relationship with our growers that normally a lot of them would sell this fruit into, we can't say any specific names, but as we say, they're the big expensive brands. So, this fruit, again, we can't say specifically, but if you think of, the most expensive wines in Australia and in South Australia, this is what we're talking about. That with our relationship, that our personality, our, you know, this friendship, you know, okay, maybe they'll sell, you know, 40%, 60%, 70% to these big people, but, you know, we get 20%, 30% to make into, instead of a $500 wine, we make it into a $50 wine, which, you know, it is just, I mean, this is the thing, we've been talking about it tonight, the level of quality in our fruit, you know, and it's through this movement. All of these grapes, then, instead of just going into, you know, the generic Shiraz blend, the generic Cabernet blend with 10 different labels, you know, we're making 500 cases, 600 cases, 700 cases, and it's really special. You know, this is, you know, this fruit, this is the Rocat's Spanish fruit. This is Hoffy and John Koleski's GSM. And that's it. Each of our wines is its own character, its own personality. They're all very special to us. They all hold a very special place in our heart.
I think it's interesting to have a little translation on that one, because I think it's a very important thing on Redheads, as you say. Het is eigenlijk een soort van, noem het een wijnmakers movement. Hè? Dus het gaat erom om, zij zeggen dat ze eigenlijk de druiven bevreden. En van wat bevreden ze de druiven? Ze bevreden de druiven van te verdwijnen in de blends van de grote Australische huizen, dat we allemaal kennen. Terwijl dat zij eigenlijk wijnen willen maken met karakter en met een ziel, waar dat ze eigenlijk ook wel in slagen. Dus ze zoeken naar de beste plots. Ze werken samen met mensen met wijngaarden. Ze zoeken naar het beste fruit. Ze zoeken naar de optimale condities om dan uiteindelijk te gaan plukken. En dan maken ze hun eigen wijnen met soul en character, zoals dat ze zeggen. Om dus niet te verdwijnen in de zoveelste Australische blend met Cabernet Sauvignon en Shiraz. Dus dat is een beetje hetgeen waarvoor zij eigenlijk staan. Thanks.
If you are buying the grapes, you make the wine at Redheads, where we saw. Yeah, so the grapes are coming over there, and then the vinification is all done in one place. It's not that you're using. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so those photos that we saw earlier from vintage. So that's, you know, that is what we do with, you know, with these wines. We buy grapes. We do the wine bit.
Okay.
That's our job.
We saw a special barrel on the picture just before when you talked about the movement. When you go back to that picture, it was a special barrel. Yeah,
it's a very special barrel. So this one down
yeah.
You know, I'm really sorry, I can't explain it properly. It's been said to me enough times, but I don't completely understand. But it's for pressurized.
Wait, Andy needs to put himself on mute.
Sorry,
Andy, can you mute yourself?
So yeah, this is the thing. You can see all these gauges on top, and that's it's quite a small barrel. So Alex is actually standing almost like on a step. So it's in real terms, it's only up to his waist. So it doesn't hold a lot, but yeah, it's for pressurized fermentation and maceration. In a very simple way of describing it.
Can we say that it's a sort of semi-carbonic?
Yes. Yeah, because it's completely airtight, so I mean it is carbonic.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that was Alex's new toy for the 2020. That was. So we've only had it for 2 years. So yeah, we got it in 2019. So it's his very special toy.
It's going to be something you will bottle separately, or?
No, so I'm trying to think the grapes that have gone through it. So it's only for quite small parcels. So I'm pretty sure we did Tempranillo. So like this thing, you know, Vin'Atus is a small wine for us. So when you have the percentages that are 30, 40, 50% for a varietal, I'm pretty sure the Tempranillo went through that. You know, because it's a small production wine, and you know, we want the grapes that go into that to be, you know, to really sing through in the final blend.
So I think if you use this kind of barrels without the oxygen, you are even more playing on the fruit.
Absolutely.
Carbonique, so it's more on the fruit side. Yeah. Okay.
Alex is very lucky that he's in Australia and that his boss is in England. It means he can buy expensive things for himself. It means he can buy barrels that, if his boss was there, his boss probably would say, "Why are you spending so much money on a fancy barrel?" His boss is in London. He's in Australia. By the time he's bought the barrel, the boss can't complain.
Yeah, once the receipt comes through at the end of the month.
It's a man and his toy. Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
Which, you know, I mean, it's a bit of a joke thing to say, but it's true. You know, with Redheads, it is about experimenting, innovating, you know, having fun with it. You know, when we've got some of these ridiculous labels, you know, it is fun, it is different, and you know, Alex is living it.
Dus het vat dat we daarnet zagen op de foto, dat klein vat, is dus een vat dat eigenlijk maar komt ter hoogte van de middel van de wijnmaker. Dus echt wel een zeer klein vat. Dus eigenlijk gewoon een beetje de manier van semi-carboniek, dus om zonder zuurstof toe te laten, om eigenlijk nog meer fruitextractie te krijgen. Dus een beetje de boy and his toy, het verhaal van de jongen en zijn speeltje. Maar dat is een beetje de bedoeling ook van de Redheads. Zoveel mogelijk experimenteren. En ervoor zorgen dat je eigenlijk het beste resultaat in de fles en in je glas krijgt. Zoals deze vierde wijn van de Barrel Monkeys.
Okay, after three, let's say, non-typical Australian wines, let's go to maybe one of the most typical grape which is grown in Australia, is the Shiraz, like you say it so beautifully. So, Barrel Monkeys.
I'll put on my finest Australian accent. Shiraz. I can't do it. Alex, you're better at doing your Australian accent than I am. You are on mute at the moment.
Shiraz.
Shiraz. Sorry.
Shiraz. So for anyone trying to put on an Australian accent, you've got to make everything you say sound like a question. So it's Shiraz, and you know, that is the wine that we are about to try.
So look, this is probably our most famous label.
Absolutely.
See no evil, hear no evil, taste no evil. I have no idea what that means. Nobody has any idea what that means. It's completely up to your interpretation. It's your understanding. It means whatever the drinker wants it to mean. That's what it signifies.
But it's you know, Redheads has been going since 2002. With Vin'Atus, the first vintage was 2015. With Ridotto, the first vintage was 2016. With Barrel Monkeys, the history of this wine basically goes back to our first year. So it is one of our longest serving members. Yes, Gerda, that's the wine. But yeah, this is the thing. The story of the Barrel Monkey. It's not just a little sort of crazy term with a strange label. A Barrel Monkey is the Australian term for all those trainee winemakers out there. So, you know, we do it at Redheads every vintage. We have, you know, like a young apprentice or, you know, learning cellar hands and, you know, future winemakers who come to help out, learn their trade. But obviously, you know, when you start at the bottom of that ladder, you've got to do all the rubbish jobs. So they're the ones climbing up over all the barrels, topping up the barrels, moving hoses around, sweeping the floor, you know, doing all the hard work while the winemaker just sits back with a glass, you know, telling everyone what to do. But that's, you know, that's what a barrel monkey is. It's that young trainee winemaker, and Barrel Monkeys is our, you know, it's our tribute to all of those, you know, those young winemakers out there. So the guy there in that photo, he's called Louis. You know, and this is it. Andy talked about the open fermenters earlier. You know, this is it. You know, we're doing most of our winemaking, you know, probably 85% of our winemaking is like this. So we get these small parcels in, and we, you know, hand plunge in this just open top plastic tub. You know, it's how we did it when we first started. Now we're in a much bigger, brand new, shiny shed, but we still do it the exact same way. But yeah, that is Barrel Monkeys, our tribute to trainee winemakers.
I guess some people, if they see this picture, they're gonna say, "Oh my God, what is this?" So it could be shocking to see how you're doing it. Yeah. But it's honest, and it works.
I imagine that a few Barrel Monkeys have probably fallen in these fermenters over the years as well.
Ja, I can imagine too, ja.
Dus eigenlijk blijven ze eigen aan de traditie, zoals als ze gestart zijn als in dat kleine restaurant, laten we zeggen, dat Indische restaurant. Ze blijven dus eigen aan de traditie. Zo werd de wijn gemaakt in het begin en zo wordt de wijn nog altijd gemaakt. Dus we zagen daar eigenlijk de open barrels, of ja, eigenlijk is het een plastic vat, waar dat ze de fermentatie in doen. En dus continu de schil van de rode druiven onderdompelen om kleurextractie en tannine-extractie en smaakextractie te gaan krijgen. Maar dat is nog altijd de manier waarop dat ze het doen. En dus de naam Barrel Monkeys is eigenlijk een tribute of een eer aan de opgeleiden of de wijnmakers die in opleiding zijn en die eigenlijk al het vuile werk mogen doen. Het kruisen, het rondlopen met slangen om dingen over te pompen enzovoort. Dus dat is hun manier om ja, die jonge wijnmakers die in opleiding zijn te eren, terwijl dat is de wijnmaker, de grote wijnmaker, achterover leunt met zijn glas en orders geeft, bij wijze van spreken. Thanks.
Thank you very much. But it looks like we've lost Alex. I'm sure he'll come back in soon. I think he's back in, is he? Have we got you back, Alex?
Yes, don't worry.
There we are. Got you back in. Well, so this is Dimitri. This is like you say. This is the stereotype. This is the old-fashioned Australia. This is the symbol. This is the big, full-bodied, juicy Shiraz, spicy, almost kind of coffee kind of aromas to it, a little bit of pepper, vanilla-y, spicy. And I don't have any hesitation in saying that this wine would go perfectly with a barbecue.
All the other ones are great with a barbecue, but this one is great with a barbecue. This is
the best with a barbecue, I think, this one. Sitting in the sun, a few burgers and sausages on the go. This is what the lads will drink at the winery when they're having a barbecue after a long, hard day of plunging grapes and climbing over barrels and that sort of thing. This is the wine that they'll pour themselves at the end of the day as well. I mean, we've got the 2018 vintage here. Again, it's still tasting incredibly well now. It's still very fresh. It still has all the aromas that you'd like it to. It does benefit from the oak aging, so it's going to make it last a little bit longer. But again, I think we're at 14.5% alcohol as well. So it is that style of Australian Shiraz, and it's not trying to pretend to be anything else. It's not like it's an Australian version of a Spanish red or an Australian version of an Italian red or French red. It's Australian. It's 100% down the line, as Australian as kangaroos and shark attacks and surfing. That's what it is.
Someone is asking the question. We had different wines until now. We had 4 wines. We had different grape varieties, but you always it always works to have a great acidity in it. So someone is asking what's behind it, because it's different blends, and anyway, every time you have an acidity that goes well with it. What's the magic recipe for that?
I suppose it's probably, there'll be an element of the production, because obviously you would normally expect alcohol to be, you would normally expect the acidity to be lower in this part of the world with it. You know, I remember talking to Alex in Australia last year, and it was up to 45 degrees centigrade. So it gets pretty hot in that part of the world. And when you reach those sorts of temperatures, it's very difficult to retain the high levels of acidity that you see. I think a lot of it will be down to the kind of the hand plunging, using the sort of the open top fermenters. From what I understand, I think that's part of why they're used, is to try and keep some of that acidity there. I think if it was kind of going straight into tank or going straight into barrel, maybe it would lose that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. In all honesty, I think that's the best answer I can give. I don't know. I'm not sure, Alex, if you've got any on top of that, to be honest. But
there's also, you know, one thing that we're allowed to do in Australia that, you know, it's either illegal or frowned upon, depending on where you are in the world. You know, if you do have a particularly hot vintage with really, you know, ripe fruit, you know, it's something that we're allowed to do, is acidify our wines a little bit. So, you know, I honestly, I couldn't tell you, you know, specifically, you know, levels or anything, but I mean, it's something that Australian winemakers are able to do, is you know, just slightly acidify our wines, just to help with that balance.
And I think on top of that, you have the climates at night, you have the sea, you have the heights.
Yeah,
that helps a lot to create some acidity in it.
Yeah, and certainly in our you know, having that relationship with the growers, you know, saying, you know, we want to harvest now, we want the grapes to be, you know, as they are now. Now, it's also having that control means, you know, we can retain, you know, whatever natural acidity there is. As you said, having the cool nights helps. A lot of our, you know, those vineyards earlier, talking about Ridotto and Vin'Atus, there's the altitude there. So again, you know, to keep that acidity there. So there's, you know, there's all these factors that, you know, all built together, you know, keeps a really good acidity in the wine, which is, you know, which is what we need. It's what Dimitri said. You know, he you know, wasn't a fan of Australian wine because it was so, was it all big, rich, heavy, juicy? You know, he wasn't interested. But then, you know, then we came along.
Dus de vraag,
how it should be done.
De vraag daarnet op de chat was waarom dat zij erin slagen om die aciditeit, om die elegantie te krijgen in hun wijnen. Dus het is een beetje een combinatie. Hè. In Australië is het toegelaten om een beetje aan te zuren. In andere delen van de wereld is dat niet toegelaten, maar gebeurt het wel. Maar het wordt gewoon niet gezegd. Zij mogen een beetje aanzuren, maar ze hebben natuurlijk ook het voordeel van de hoogte, zoals dat we al gezegd hebben, de nabijheid van de zee. Het moment van plukken, ze zitten dus in zeer nauwe relatie met degenen die de wijngaarden hebben. Dus ze kijken perfect ook naar het moment waarop de druiven moeten geplukt worden. En al die combinaties zorgen natuurlijk voor die elegantie en voor die aciditeit. Oké, thanks.
Actually, and so we've also had a question about pH levels there in wine. I mean, I've just got, just by chance, I have the Princess of Thieves, the wine before this. The pH level on that is 3.58. You know, if that means much.
But indeed, also the eucalyptus, which is in that, gives you that fresh feeling, gives you how can I say it lifts up the acidity which is in that. So that's in this case is good, yeah.
Completely agree. Something that we'd like to show you as well, we talked about this briefly earlier, is this is our second kind of vintage really in our brand new purpose-built, incredibly environmentally friendly winery. So let me just bring up the slide that I wanted to show you and just give you a little bit of an idea of what we're doing in Australia with the new winery, because we're kind of, the whole point is that we're kind of going green in the Barossa. And so the last couple of years, I don't know if you're familiar with the drinks business wine magazine. It's very popular here in the UK, and I think in America as well. And for the first time in our history, we've won awards both in 2019 and 2020. So like we say on there, we've kind of come a long way since that first tiny shed, that tiny winery in Mc Laren Vale back in 2002. That was sort of back then, we were, like we said before, that home for young winemakers that wanted to do new things, wanted to try and make interesting wine. We've come a long way in 20 years, and the new winery is incredibly environmentally friendly. So much so that 97%, as you can see there, of the energy that we generate is from the solar panels on the roof, and so pretty much all of the energy that we use in the winery we generate ourselves. As you can see there, 2,700,000 megalitres of rainwater are collected each year. That is essentially what we won the Drinks Business Green Award for, our wastewater management. So pretty much all of the water that we use in the winery is what's fallen from the skies. In 2020, we were also given a special mention, and we're given a commendation for our work on renewable energy. So kind of what we're doing at the moment, we're very much focused on making interesting wines, coming up with new blends, coming up with new stories, finding wines from new vineyards and new regions in different years, but also, it's so important at the moment in today's day and age that we're as sustainable as we can be, really. So it's kind of vital that we're doing this work that we are, and hopefully in the next few years we'll be able to generate even more energy, in which case we'll be able to almost give some back to the grid in South Australia, so they'll be able to use it in other wineries. I think hand that one over to you, Hans. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, we're still gathering data, because obviously it's still very new for us. But it's something like across the last 12 months, so a full year of sunshine, of vineyard, of vintage, power usage, where something like 97%, I think, is our power that we have generated, it's incredible. When you think how hot and sunny Australia is as a country, it just makes sense if you've got a massive roof that you put solar panels on it. And even then, any power that we draw that's not ours is still from entirely green sources. So we make sure that everything we do is green. Same with the water. There's so little rainfall that it's vital that we capture and recycle as much as we can. It's just such a precious resource. Water in South Australia for grape growing, it's especially in the Barossa. It's almost done on a share system. So if you want to use tap water, to stick the irrigation on, it's not that easy. So that we have this pool, Lake Redheads, in that bottom right-hand corner for you, that just shows 2.7 million litres of water. And that is just rainwater or water that we've hosed down the floor in the winery. It all goes into some pipes, all gets filtered out, all ends up in that lake there. This thing, water is just so vital in Australia. Unlike Europe, got plenty of water to spare over here. It's been raining all day in England, but yeah.
But it's an important topic. because now they're talking about people pumping up water in their garden, illegal in Belgium. So I think water is important everywhere. So I will do a little translation. Dus hetgeen dat zij zeggen, ze hebben dus al verschillende prijzen gewonnen met de manier waarop dat ze bezig zijn. Dus ze hebben ook rekening gehouden bij het bouwen van de winery. Ze gebruiken zonnepanelen. Hetgeen dat we zagen in het begin, hetgeen dat Dimitri getoond heeft, dat filmpje, dan zag je zo van boven de winery en dan zag je daar een grote vlek te midden die wijngaard. En nu heb ik gezien wat die vlek eigenlijk is. Dus zij vangen het water ook op. Zelfs het water dat ze gebruiken, bij wijze van spreken, op de kuisen in de winery, wordt via een eigen filtersysteem terug gebruikt nadien. Het wordt gefilterd, het wordt terug opgevangen. Ze zorgen voor het opwekken via de zonnepanelen voor een groot stuk van de energie dat ze verbruiken. Dus ze willen eigenlijk zo eco-friendly mogelijk zijn. Ze hebben er al serieus veel prijzen mee gewonnen als ze zich vergelijken met verschillende grote wineries in de wereld zelfs. Dus ik denk dat dat alleen maar... dat we dat alleen maar kunnen toejuichen. Oké, thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, let's move on to the penultimate wine, the famous or infamous Monkey King, the Coco Rotie, which is probably the most recognizable label I think that we have. I always love the brown monkeys, but I'm particularly keen on this. My favorite bit, I don't know if you can see it there, is the gold tooth that the monkey has. Maybe he's not going to the dentist as often as he should do. But this is always very, very popular in the UK. I think obviously we're very proud of our royal family. So that's the good reason for the crown. And our current government are all monkeys, and so I think this label is very popular in the UK for that reason.
Just to be clear, any political opinions expressed in this video are purely Andy's opinion, and not the opinion of Redheads Wine or Darwin. But yeah, so Coco Rotie, our Monkey King. Here. So if any of you have the pleasure of have the full story, but it's a good one. So all the way back in 638 AD, the legend of the Monkey King was born. So the origins of Coco Rotie is, as I said, barrel monkeys is one of our oldest brands for Redheads, most loved wines. So we actually wanted to introduce a sort of a barrel monkeys reserve. So we brought out our Coco Rotie. So you have a monkey. How do you make a monkey reserve? You put a crown on it. So our Coco Rotie, we were saying, every bit as mischievous and furry as his smaller relatives, our barrel monkeys. But this legendary figure, no amount of wine could quell his divine thirst. And no amount of roasted coconuts, or anyone in French want to guess what coconuts is in French? A quick guess in the chat. But roasted coconuts could not satisfy his divine hunger. So our Monkey King here, he possessed immense strength. He was able to lift barrels, throw them from one side of the jungle to the other. But this is it, our Coco Rotie, our Monkey King. I can't see any guesses for what coconuts is in French. Unbelievable. But you're on mute, Andy.
Noix de coco.
Noix de coco. And then roasted coconut.
Noix de coco roti.
Hey!
Coco roti.
Hey! And then, I'm not allowed to say, but obviously this wine is a Syrah Viognier, and there's, a very famous region in the world for Syrah Viognier. But yeah, I can't say what that is.
I think it's in France or Spain or
somewhere
nearby
in
Coco Rotie.
France.
I think, nearby Coco Rotie.
So what was that, Hans? What did you say?
Nearby Coco Rotie.
Never heard of it. But yeah, so our Syrah Viognier, our Coco Rotie. So with this wine, we've gone to, it's actually a few different members of our Redheads family to source the fruit. I mean, quite simply, if we want to make a few extra cases and keep the quality high, you've got to expand that family. The wine started out originally as a single vineyard. We still pick from that vineyard, but now we actually work with a couple of extra people as well. So there's Jeff McMurtry, who we talked about before for the part of the Shiraz in Princess of Thieves. Sorry, John Koleski for the Princess of Thieves, but now we work with Jeff McMurtry and Darren Arney. So Jeff McMurtry, Wilma McMurtry. So that name is a very important part of Redheads history. So going all the way back to when we first started, we worked with the McMurtry family. It was actually Jeff's brother is one of the people that we worked with. So it's really nice for us that it's still the family. The vineyard itself is it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant to work with. It's the soil is this sandy loam over clay, so again fantastic drainage, so that grapes really have to struggle for that moisture, which really again concentrates flavor. Something that I've mentioned a few times. Concentrates flavor, lots of fruit, lots of just flavor. This is the thing. And then for the Viognier in this wine, what we do is we get the Viognier, we crush the Viognier, and that goes into one of our white wines. Then we get the skins, and we co-ferment the skins of the Viognier with all the Shiraz that comes in off these three other vineyards. Which, I believe that's how some famous French regions make this style of wine. Maybe Hans or Dimitri can shed some more light on that, but I'm not allowed to. But yeah, it's that's how it is. In the old world, there's not many legally allowed ways that you can blend a red and a white wine, but this is one of those ways.
Dus de verwijzing hier van de Coco Rotie. Ze hebben dus het verhaal van de aap die graag de geroosterde kokosnoten had. Dus als je geroosterde kokosnoten, dan spreekt je over de Coco Rotie. Of de noix de Coco Rotie. Maar eigenlijk refereert dit naar de Côte Rotie in Frankrijk natuurlijk. Dus typische regio waar je de Syrah hebt en een beetje Viognier. Dus op exact dezelfde manier gemaakt. De Viognier wordt geperst voor apart voor wit. Maar dan worden de druiven bij de rode druiven, of de druivenschillen bij de rode druiven gedaan om samen te fermenteren. En op die manier krijg je dus eigenlijk deze Coco Rotie. Of in Frankrijk de Côte Rotie. Oh, don't mention the war. Yeah.
I'm not very good with Dutch, but
if I compare, for example, the barrel monkeys, we have the Syrah, 100%, and I compare it with the Coco Rotie, which is the Syrah, and a little bit. I think we're talking about 9% of Viognier in it, something like that, 7 or 9%, 5, okay, even less. What's the big difference in making of both? Dus ik heb enkel gewoon gevraagd van wat is het verschil tussen die barrel monkeys, waar je 100% Syrah hebt, en de Coco Rotie, waar je Syrah hebt en 5% Viognier. What's the difference between both?
I don't think there's a huge amount. They both go into the sort of the open top fermenters. They've still got the temperature control that goes in there. It's the main difference is simply that the Syrah is co-fermented with the Viognier. Apart from that, they're made in pretty much the same way. There's the temperature control. I think there's probably a bit more hand plunging with the Coco Rotie. So it has a sort of a little bit more kind of primary fruit flavour, I suppose. But there's not a huge amount of difference besides adding 5% of white wine skins into the blend.
What we always tell is it's like making a recipe. You do a recipe and you put in some little citrus to lift it up, and that's what the Viognier does with the Syrah, I think.
It's the tonic in a gin and tonic.
Yeah.
It has that nice aromatic. Dimitri, you used this word earlier on, kind of lifted. And it just makes it a bit fresher. With the Viognier, you tend to get these lovely kind of apricot and nectarine stone fruit flavors, and it just gives it a freshness. The Shiraz is like we said, bold, 100% Australian, heavy, 14.5% alcohol Shiraz. This is Shiraz, but a little bit softer and maybe a little bit smoother, a little bit fruitier, and possibly just a little bit easier to drink. But still very good with a barbecue.
Again.
Yeah, the red line of tonight will be the barbecue, of course.
Yeah.
But I love it when this is actually one of the best sellers in the range. The Viognier does it very well with the Shiraz. It's like we said already, it's balanced. It's very balanced again. And having a white wine and a red wine, I don't know. It's not so often that they do that, but this is really well made. Yeah,
I think so. It's still got a nice bit of spice. It still had 12 months in oak as well, so it's got you definitely get that kind of sweet cedar oak again.
But to go back to the vinification, you talked about that you're making from the Viognier grapes. You make the white wine, which goes to another cuvée, let's call it, another wine you made, and then only the leftovers is the wrong word, but the grapes which are already crushed, they go then together for the fermentation with the Shiraz.
Yes. Yeah. So the white grapes come into the winery, they get crushed, the juice goes off to make one of our white wines, and the skins go into the fermenter with all the Shiraz to ferment together.
It's incredibly labor intensive. It's not an easy, it's not like with some of them where you bring in loads of nice Shiraz grapes and you make put it all in the oak barrel and it comes out like a nice big bold spicy Shiraz. It's a little bit more time and effort has to go into it. But Rome wasn't built in a day. You've got to give these things some time to develop before they're at their best, I think.
And for the alcoholic fermentation, for example, you use steel, or you do it in concrete tanks, or
stainless steel.
Yeah, for this, all stainless steel.
Oh, okay.
I think there's maybe there's some I don't know. I think maybe there's some concrete as well.
No.
No. Am I confusing it with something else? That's what happens when you've tried 5 different wines.
And you don't have the small.
Actually, in fact, Coco 18 has some concrete.
That's it. Yeah.
So when we do this tasting next year, hopefully when we're all together in person, we'll be talking about the concrete.
But this is quite interestingly as well. This, of all of the wines in our range, you can possibly correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but I think this has won more awards than any other wine that we've ever produced. The 2018 vintage Coco Rotie has, I think it's maybe 9 or 10 gold medals from wine competitions all over the world. I think it was one of our first wines to be featured in Wine Spectator magazine. Yeah. Alex,
I always get confused. So please don't quote me on this, but for the 17 vintage, we scored 95 points from Decanter. So it is quite something. Hopefully this works, and I'm not just going to share the completely wrong thing on my screen.
We've had that problem before, Alex.
We have had these issues before. But this is from our Coco Rotie 2017 product sheet that we have. But this shot here in the corner, that is the Shiraz and the Viognier together in the barrel, in the tank, being fermented together. And the shot above it is a bucket full of Viognier and a bucket full of Shiraz. So we obviously have a lot more Shiraz than that, but this is the bit that goes together to be fermented.
I already get a question from someone who is asking, maybe it's a hint, what's the year of the return of the living red? So let's go over to the sixth wine.
That's very subtle of hands.
So let's go over to the sixth wine, the return of the living red, because I think there's a nice story behind it.
Well, I'm going to leave this one up to Alex, because I've heard Alex tell this story hundreds of times, and still one of my favorite things is to hear Alex tell this story. So this one's over to you, Alex.
Wow. And that is quite the introduction for the story for a wine label.
And surely show the label if you can.
Right. So, as we know, this is our return of the living red. So, it's actually amazing, doing this job, talking about our labels and the stories behind them. Obviously there is a bit of artistic license. We show a bit of creativity with some of them. This Monkey King. It's is that true? Probably not. But this one, this is where I ask you to, just have a think. But yeah, this is some people really don't believe this story when I tell them. Why would I lie about it? I have no reason to. But the point is that one night our winemaker, he's just in the winery, just doing his thing, checking on all the ferments. But then he heard this noise out in the vineyards, this sort of like screeching and sort of like scratching noise. So he's pretty sure he is the only person there. Obviously in Australia we have a lot of snakes and spiders, but they don't make sound. He was very curious, so he went out to investigate, and he checked every row, then the next row, and he kept getting closer and closer to this sound until eventually he finally stumbled upon where it was coming from, and it was this zombie that was in the winery, in the vineyard. And I think the Dutch for zombie is zombie. So Hans, maybe you can correct me on that, just in case anyone is a bit lost in this story. Thank you. But yeah, so he saw this thing, he jumped on it, he grabbed it, he dragged it, kicking and screaming, back to the winery, where he then did an autopsy on this zombie. So if any of you have the bottle of Return of the Living Red, you actually do have the police report from that night contained in this envelope. So where it talks about the family, who used to own the land and were there, but we do also have these these illustrations of the autopsy. This is very serious stuff here. But when we reported all this to the police, they did actually redact, cancel, ignore, scratch from the records this entire story. So it says just down here, in the official police report, the above documentation is to be kept from public display. Our winemaker is to be held in custody, charged with treason, until such time that he confesses to fabricating these documents. I, for one, stand by our winemaker. He would never tell a lie. But that is the story of the Return of the Living Red. Oh dear, I ruined my whole display there, but this is another picture. I even had it put on a t-shirt. But our zombie had this bunch of grapes where its heart should be. And obviously, being a winery, we took those grapes and we made a wine. So that is the story of the Return of the Living Red.
How could any of that not be true?
And I see that a lot of people are looking very scared and very serious to the screen. So, yeah, just look behind you. Andy, I think I saw something at your window. Yeah.
Well, just so everybody is aware, I'm currently at home alone. Where I am in London, behind me here, I don't know.
Can we get a torch to shine out of your door?
How much of we can see behind me here, the wall, behind that wall is the third biggest cemetery in London. And so every time I drink the Return of the Living Red, I'm terrified that a zombie is going to climb over that wall, especially considering I'm now home alone.
Yeah, someone is asking, does zombie taste well on a barbecue?
What? So just to clarify, is this to cook a zombie on a barbecue?
The zombie's a welcome guest, I think, to the barbecue.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Because I'm not sure you'd want to have like a zombie steak or some zombie spare ribs. Probably a bit chewy.
But without talking about the zombie with, instead of his heart, you had the grapes. Why you are choosing for this blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Touriga, and Petit Verdot?
So actually, and this ties in nicely with the question about what year this wine comes from. So Return of the Living Red, we do a new bottling every year, but the components of that wine are from different vintages. So when we bottle, our wines, we have our premium range. There is always, 1 barrel, 2 barrels left over. So every year when it comes time to doing, our Return of the Living Red, that edition, our winemaker, goes to all these special leftover barrels and just picks the best ones. So every year it always has Touriga as part of the blend, but the other 2 components can change. So we've got, in recent years we've had, as I said, Touriga is always there, but it's sometimes Cabernet Shiraz, Cabernet Petit Verdot, Shiraz, Touriga, something else. But this is the point. Touriga is always in the wine. We make it every year, but the blend changes and the age of those components changes, which is why it is a non-vintage wine.
Ja, dus dat is een antwoord op iemand die de vraag stelt van wat is de vintage. Dus het is een non-vintage omdat er eigenlijk een blend gebeurt van verschillende vaten, verschillende druiven. Er zit altijd Touriga in, maar de andere druiven verschillen. Dus dat is 1. Dus de blend verschilt van jaar tot jaar. En ten tweede, de leeftijd van de wijnen die geblend worden verschilt ook, zodanig dat je eigenlijk geen jaartal kunt opkleven en dat je dus spreekt van een non-vintage. Vandaar de NV op onze prijslijst. Oké, super, thank you.
Een kleine opmerking. This is not like it is written on the price list Petit Verdot, but Malbec. So it's Cabernet Sauvignon,
yes,
and Malbec. Yeah. So we have a more recent one now. The previous one was Petit Verdot. No. They just changed.
That's what they do. The winemaker, he likes to keep us on our toes.
This is then really the premium wine you make, with, of course, the beautiful story, but also with a lot of potential, a lot of power, a lot of complexity.
Well,
can we just check
interesting part as well is, I don't know if you can see, so every bottle is sealed in wax around the outside as well, and it's actually, this is the only time I've ever opened this bottle successfully, because every time the wax on the top of the bottle, I find it very difficult. So this is actually, and it's because I'm on my own, so nobody can see just how good a job I did opening this bottle of wine this time.
Actually,
thanks for sharing, Andy. Thanks.
With wines with the wax top, you don't need to like chisel and cut away. You do just put the corkscrew just straight through the wax, through the cork, and just pull it out, and then you end up with a beautiful bottle like Andy had just then.
Okay, thanks. Someone is asking, how would you describe the wine in the nose, the smell?
Just have to pour a little bit more.
Just to double check, you know.
I think it's quite blackcurranty. Again, it's again, I think there's eucalyptus in there. Obviously, there is a kind of a fair amount of Cabernet Sauvignon, so that kind of that mintiness, and I think that blackcurranty cassis.
Some toasted notes.
Yeah, it's almost a bit. It's almost sort of tobacco leaf.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of. A little bit kind of like, again, sort of sweet fruits from the oak aging as well. I think it's a little bit kind of cinnamony, a little bit cedar. Maybe sort of raspberry fruit flavors as well. But it's quite interesting. It's quite complex. You've got the primary fruits. You can feel it's developing. I think even though it's a non-vintage, it's probably around 4 or 5 years old now, this wine. Maybe jams and fruit flavors as well.
Someone who is also mentioned that she's completely alone at home mentions now that there's a lot of perfume in the smell. It's very, how can you say it? It's not aromatic, but it's very intense.
Intense, yeah. And do you know the percentage of the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Touriga, and the Malbec?
I'm sorry, but that's part of the classified documentation. We don't know.
If you would like the grown-up answer.
Yes, please. Thank you.
If you'd like the adult answer, it's 50% Cabernet and 25% each of Touriga and Malbec. But if you tell anybody, we'll have to kill you.
And
actually, sorry, if you could just not record that last bit.
And if you talk about a non-vintage, what kind of vintage are we talking about then?
So this wine was actually bottled in 2015. But yeah, the components from it are, I want to say, from 13 and 14. Which again, it's another reason why, you know, we can't label it under a year. So it doesn't matter what year it was bottled, but because the juice itself is from different years.
Is this a wine that you would suggest to keep in your cellar or to drink it?
Cellar it.
Okay, but then, okay, perfect.
To drink on Halloween.
It's what?
To drink it on Halloween.
Of course.
Can I just from, you know, show of hands or in the comments, who believed the story? Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Andy. Do you know what? Yes, thank you. Quite a few people. Quite right too.
Everybody believes you, Alex. We just don't.
Everyone believes me.
So again, someone is asking the question, lots of delicious young wines. How many years can you keep these wines? It's a question that pops up in different tastings. We do online tastings. We get the question, how long can we let the wines age in our cellar?
I mean, I never think less than 4 or 5 years. I think we had, Alex, I think we drank some Barrel Monkeys 2015 or 2016 recently, and that was still fantastic. And the Barrel Monkeys is at the kind of the lower end of our wines, and I still think that's great for 4 to 5 years at least. The Italian and the Spanish definitely for six or 7 years. The Princess of Thieves, we had some 2013 vintage Princess of Thieves not long ago, and that was incredible. It was one of the best Redheads wines I've ever tasted, was the 2013 Princess of Thieves, and this is the 2017 that we've tasted this evening. And then wines like the Return of the Living Red, Cabernet Touriga Malbec. These are great varieties that, you know, Touriga is a great used in port, so this can easily be 10 years plus, I think. So I don't think anything less than 4 or 5. And then with the really special wines, the great stuff, the best wines that we make, 10 years plus, I think.
You taste that Return to the Living Red, and it's still got so much of that tannin, that acidity, that, you know, that's still got plenty of, I mean, for a zombie wine, it has plenty of life left in it. So thank you.
I think we can make a conclusion because we are already a lot over the time. At the end, we are now in Australia. Wines, like I told you at the beginning, are standing out of all the rest because of their freshness that we already mentioned a lot in this tasting, but it still comes out. You can really drink this wine without falling asleep or having, after one glass, say, I want something else. You can surprise people with the first 3 because they are atypical, let's say. They are a sort of a surprise that they are coming from Australia. Then the 2 Shiraz, 2 different impressions, but very nice made, both. Nice with the Viognier in it, the Coco Rotie. And then the last one, the Return of the Living Red. If you have a party or a dinner and you're opening big Bordeaux, for example, I suggest you open this one, and you will be amazed how this will be a success on your table. Like we already felt tonight of the 2 guys which were now still among us, the rock and roll part is very important if you want to work with redheads. You need to be a little bit crazy. And yeah, that's what we all are, a little bit, no? A little bit crazy. And definitely if you come with wines of redheads, original, funky, there is a story behind it. It's not just a one shot. No, they really have focus. They know what they are doing, and they trying to make a difference.
Thank you very much, Dimitri.
It's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Dimitri, for organising this evening's tasting. It's great to see so many of you joining us this evening. So thank you very much, Dimitri, for organising, and thank you very much, everybody else, for joining us. I hope you all have very much enjoyed the wines, enjoyed the stories, and what we had to say. Like we say, we've been through in 20 years, Redheads has got quite a story. Some wineries are hundreds of years old, and I don't think their story is as interesting as ours. So Redheads has changed a lot. We've got a great story to tell. We've got a very passionate team of winemakers, and yeah, it's very good to be. You know, it's a shame we can't be there in person tonight, but it's great talking to you guys over Zoom, and I really hope you enjoyed all of the wines and what we had to say.
Yeah. So, like you already see in the chat, a lot of mystery, a lot of rock and roll. This is down to earth, no nonsense, honest, and okay, with a clear vision. If you want to be member of the Redheads movement, then we have some pins like this. So people who want to have this, you can have it. And already, if you are going a little bit further, then you also can make it. So Redheads has tattoos. You can put it on your arm or wherever you want. So these are things, gadgets, which we have and which will be put if you want to order something. You will this. Ik wil jullie ook bedanken. Het is iets langer uitgelopen dan voorzien. Maar ja, met die 2 gasten weet je natuurlijk nooit hoe het uitloopt of wat dan ook. Dan moet je eens een keer in het echt meemaken. Dan ben je nog lang niet thuis. Maar goed, de eerste keer dat ze een Zoom-sessie doen, zo waren we wat zenuwachtig. En uiteindelijk is het allemaal goed gelukt. Ik wil jullie ook bedanken voor jullie aanwezigheid. Wij hebben trouwens 25 maart de volgende tasting. Heyman Leuwenstein hebben we. Dat is de moezel. Dat is iemand die de G-spot van de Riesling ontdekt heeft. Mocht je niet weten wat dat G-spot is, dan moet je maar een keer opzoeken. Maar de G-spot van de Riesling ontdekken, dat kan ik verzekeren, dat is niet zomaar. Dus Heyman Leuwenstein, die heeft dat ontdekt. Dat is wereldniveau, dat is een zot, bij wijze van spreken. Maar je doet het ook, dat is 25 maart, ook een donderdag. En dan hebben we op 1 april hebben we Malat Winery uit Oostenrijk. Kremstal is dat juist naast Wachau. Michael Malat zal er dan ook zijn. En iedere tasting is anders. Het is een keer op deze manier. Het is een keer met de wijnmaker zelf. Het is, ja. Maar dat is net de fun. Hè. Iedere keer een andere insteek. No boring sessions.
Ja, en ondertussen, in the meantime, we get a lot of reactions. Thanks everyone, thanks for the splendid evening. At least some rock and roll in winemaking. And very happy someone is telling to have winemakers with humor. So it's a nice combination and it's reflected in the wines also. So that's a good thing. And someone is asking if you can also have a piercing of redheads. I don't know, maybe, yeah. I don't know, we will. It's a nice idea to have a piercing with redheads on it, why not? So okay, also from my part, a very big thank you. Dus aan iedereen ook, check de website. Een aantal zeer toffe nieuwe online tastings komen eraan, zoals Dimitri aangekondigd heeft. Er zijn er nog een aantal in de running. We zijn aan het denken aan Zuid-Afrika, we zijn aan het denken aan Nieuw-Zeeland. Some crazy stuff. Dus check de website en dan zie je wel wat er nog komende is. Morgen krijg je dus, zoals dat Dimitri zegt van mij, de link naar de opgenomen versie. En als je bestelt, niet online, want onze promomodule is bijna klaar, maar we hebben ze nog niet uitgetest. Dus als je bestelt, doe het dan gewoon door een antwoord op de mail die ik jullie zal sturen voor de 10%. En dan komt alles sowieso in orde. Thanks a lot and have a splendid evening. And watch out behind your back, Andy.
There is somebody knocking on my door at the moment.
Ondertussen blijft onze café nog open. Voor degenen die nog online willen blijven, dat kan. Degenen die daar net niet durven van vragen te stellen, kunnen nog vragen stellen als ze willen. Dus ja, the floor is yours.
Het officiële gedeelte is voorbij. Nu, het serieuze gedeelte is voorbij. Nu gaan we over naar het minder serieuze gedeelte. Dus het café is open. Wij blijven nog even online. Jullie kunnen gerust jezelf unmuten en uw mening delen of een beetje zeveren, met andere woorden.